You are listening to the Southwestern American Choral Directors Association Connections podcast, where we will interview choral directors, leaders, and movers and shakers within our region. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Wall. We hope you enjoy these conversations. Please like and subscribe this YouTube channel for future content. Hello again, everyone. Today I'm joined on the pod by Tanner Oglesby. He's the Director of Choirs for the Bryant School District, where he leads the secondary choral department, teaches high school choir, and collaborates with administrators for the advancement of fine arts in the district. Under Tanner's direction, students have achieved high ranks in the state and national level honor choirs, and his ensembles have received several best-in-class distinctions at Arkansas State Choral Festival. As always, there's a lot more to read about Tanner in his bio in the description of this video. And we encourage you again to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, share widely with your choral colleagues, and get to know all of these folks through interview. Tanner is also our SSAA choirs R&R chair for Southwestern ACDA. And so without further delay, I give you Tanner Oglesby.
Hello, everybody. I'm here with Tanner Oglesby. Tanner, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello. How are you?
Doing great. So first off, let's just start about your backstory. Let's talk about your musical upbringing. What brought you to be the Tanner of today?
Yeah, so I was originally a band kid, and I was fortunate enough to have a band director who really encouraged us to sing our music. And she was a vocalist as well. And the choir director at my school ended up kind of urging me to do choir. So I did choir my senior year and fell in love with it. And I went through college. I kind of ran away from music for a little bit. Like I didn't think that I was cut out for it. And everything pointed towards it. And ultimately, I ended up getting a chapter scholarship to go to the Minneapolis convention of ACDA, the National Convention. And that's what started my journey with ACDA. And I fell in love with it. And so it's been a part of my career for the past 8 years. I've constantly used ACDA as a resource, and yeah, so that's the abridged version.
Gotcha. Tell us a little bit about your schooling and where you grew up, and what brought you into the music world.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Central Arkansas. I'm from Benton, Arkansas, which is about 20 minutes south of Little Rock, and I currently teach in a neighboring town in Bryant, Arkansas. But I got my undergrad degree from Henderson State University, which is close to an hour outside of Little Rock. And then I have my master's in education from Arkansas State University, and I have my Master of Music degree from Western Illinois University. And so that's a little bit about where I'm from and my schooling.
Excellent. Right now, you're teaching. Did I read that right? Bryant?
Yeah, Bryant High School.
Excellent.
I'm the
Okay.
director of choirs here for the district, and I also am the head choral director for the high school.
Perfect. Okay, so tell us now a little bit about your role with Southwestern ACDA and kind of what you'll be doing for us.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to being the treble R&R chair. And I have a couple of ideas of ways that we can engage our membership, but ultimately as the treble R&R chair, my goal is to compile lists of repertoire pertaining to treble groups, and also make sure that we're providing not only at our SWACDA conference in 2026, which is in Albuquerque. I'm super excited about it. But just in general, creating some resources for our membership pertaining to pedagogy for treble groups, and just like the approach of teaching treble groups and some common issues that we might overcome. And kind of as a part of my role, I'm an active member of our Arkansas chapter of ACDA. And so I'm also looking forward to sharing information and kind of connecting SWACDA to our Arkansas membership as well and getting them engaged.
Yeah, that sounds fun, having you in this role. We're going to talk a little bit later about one of the initiatives here on the podcast, having you guest host.
Yes.
But now we'll get into a few sort of esoteric, off the beaten path questions. Some of them have something to do with choir stuff, and some of them have nothing to do. But what's a piece of music that you think best embodies your personality?
I would have to say the Kirchner arrangement of Unclouded Day, just because um, I'm, I guess, an easily excitable person. I'm a bigger personality. I'm an extrovert. And I'm really big on bringing joy to the room. And so Unclouded Day is kind of the piece I think of when I think of my personality, or especially so I've been told. That would have to be the one.
Very cool. Okay, so kind of an offshoot of that, what is your desert island choral piece? Only one that maybe you could have with you for your duration stranded.
One of my favorites, not only because of its accessibility, but because of just how stunningly beautiful and in a way simple it is, would have to be the Hogan arrangement of Hear My Prayer. Um, is definitely that piece for me.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful piece. Okay, do you have a particular philosophy of programming that you espouse?
Yeah, so I'm I try my best to be intentional with programming in terms of programming music from a diverse set of composers and making sure that, we hear often people say, choosing composers that reflect the diversity of your ensemble. And sometimes your ensemble doesn't necessarily reflect the diversity that you would think. And you might think that your ensemble is not very diverse, but I think that even in not as diverse ensembles, you need to have a diversity of programming. And so one of my biggest philosophies is exposing kids to various styles of literature, various genres of literature from various time periods, making sure that there's representation. And being intentional in that way. One of my kind of quirks is programming. I love to find pieces that have key relationships. I love ending a piece in a key and starting in that same key or kind of a relative key. I love doing things like that as well. The least amount that I have to pluck out the notes, the better. I think that sometimes if you can tell a story that way, it's impactful.
Yeah, I agree with that too. You mentioned a little bit about the diversity of programming and trying to program based on the diversity of your ensemble. And I guess that depends somewhat on, your definition of diversity. A lot of different people are defining it different ways these days. Um, so what would you say is an approach should your ensemble not be as diverse? Although I would argue, we all come to this with many very different experiences,
Yeah.
No matter what we all look like, so
Right.
maybe you can speak a little bit to that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my thoughts on that are, I have a friend who's also a choral director who says, if it's written on the page, it's meant to be sung. And I think that sometimes, especially in regards to like in regards to choosing literature, I think sometimes people they try to pigeonhole themselves into one type of literature that they're comfortable with. And I just use the perfect example of myself. I did grow up in poverty, and my parents were divorced when I was younger, much younger, and so I didn't get the pleasure of growing up in church. And so I didn't grow up learning the Black gospel tradition. I also did not grow up learning in any kind of religious tradition musically. But all of those forms of music making are valid. And so I think my approach as the conductor is to still program diverse literature, but make sure that I'm acknowledging the experts who understand common performance practice. And, even though I may have a predominantly white ensemble, they still need to experience the beauty of the African American spiritual and music of the Black gospel tradition. And I think it's all just that has to do with my approach as a conductor and how I'm going to approach learning that and teaching that to them. And I acknowledge too on various, just like I'm not an expert in Russian music. If I were to program a Russian tune, I'm going to do the research, right? And so it's not to oversimplify things, but if you're doing the work, I think it's important that music is learned. Another example of diversity in literature, this is something that I'm going to be kind of talking about later on in terms of specifically treble ensembles, just as an example. Um, programming literature that doesn't all kind of geared towards a gender specific voice, if that makes sense. Like at the middle school level, there are treble voices that are not that ne don't necessarily identify as female, right? We have unchanged male voices. And so I think it's really important that that's not to say that those boys cannot sing music that would traditionally have the voice of a female narrator. But it's important that we're programming diverse literature so to kind of keep it fresh and keep it about storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard agree. Yeah, my ensemble is, predominantly white and members of the Cherokee Nation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so it's important for me in my ensemble, for instance, to bring in maybe music that they have not been exposed to.
yeah,
Um, so when we talk about diversity of repertoire, I'm trying to expose them to that, gospel tradition, spirituals, maybe Pacific Islander, yeah, all kinds of different music that maybe they're not readily accustomed to.
right.
But then I completely agree with you. Bringing in those experts is paramount to making sure that they understand the full context of what we're singing and the historical background and everything. So great answer there. Okay, so what are some maybe pointers that you might have for an emerging choral leader?
I would say one of my biggest pointers that I could give would be to make connections. I mean, it seems so simple, but making connections is not easy. As we know, as educators, kind of teaching kids through the pandemic and post-pandemic, making connections can be kind of complicated. And so what I mean by making connections is take opportunities, put yourself out there, offer to help with something. If you're putting yourself out there, putting your name out there, and you're present and you're filling gaps that you see, people are going to recognize you. And I always say that leaders who have to say that they're a leader aren't leaders, leaders who are leading in action and making it very clear with not just the work that they're doing and volunteering for things, but also the work they're doing with their ensemble, and seeking to grow and seeking to learn. Those are going to be the best things that you can do.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, leading by example, leading by action. I really like that phrase. Um, okay, I skipped a question here, so let's go back to it. How would you describe what a typical rehearsal might look like under your direction?
So, I teach high school, and I think a lot of this applies everywhere. But the very first thing I like to start with is some sort of body exercise, and I try to double dip, and getting the kids to really watch me. So I do this exercise where I have them mirror my movements, little brain exercise like that. So they're warming up their bodies, they're getting the blood flowing. I don't know how it is at most schools, but our kids are used to being stuck to a screen all day. So I like to have them really physical and moving around because we have 15-minute class periods. And so they're up and moving the majority, if not all of the class. And so we start with a brief little body warm up, and then we transition smooth into some vocalises and some technique. And I try to be intentional with my technique, and work out techniques that they're needing in our literature. And then we might branch off and do some sectional work and have some student leaders, and I go around and facilitate the groups that need the most help. And we a lot of times will just have group rehearsal. And I try to read the room and make sure that we're keeping, how I teach second period is not how I teach at the end of the day for sixth period. So yeah, that's just a little bit about it. And this year I actually have an assistant director of choir. So we're still, even in this year, getting into a new normal of like maximizing our efficiency, and it's going well.
Yeah, that's a hard question because it's never the same day to day, and it's always about teach the singers that are in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of related to the pointers that you might have had for an emerging choral leader, what general advice would have you have given to yourself at 16 years old?
Oh, at 16. Well, at 16, I thought I knew quite a bit, but I knew nothing. What I would go back and tell myself, and I'm sure this is common with a lot of people who seem, confident and are leaders. I would have told myself at 16 that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be open, and it's okay to not know things. It's okay to not know things. Um, and that was hard for me. I feel like a lot of young people, like they're focusing on what they do know, for the sake of validation. And that's okay in the moment. But I think at some point I had to learn the hard way, as we all do, that there comes a time where you have to admit you don't know things, and you've got to be willing to learn and grow.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think I could have taken that advice at 16 too. Um, yeah, it's the same for me. I feel like one of the things I say to my singers a lot is, it's not that it's difficult. It's just you haven't done it enough.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that, But at 16 and young people, a lot often it's understanding that you don't know it. And I think that's that was right up where you were talking. So that's a great answer there as well. What are related to that? Okay, so what advice do you think your elderly self would give to you right now?
Oh, speaking of vulnerability, I think me even 10, 15 years down the road would tell me now to stop trying to plan the future and let it happen. Don't forget to enjoy the present and the process. That's an ongoing thing I'm reminding myself of. Enjoy the process, make it fun. Otherwise, it's all for naught.
Absolutely, live in the now. I love that. Okay, so this this is kind of a weird question, but think about yourself in a sanctioned WWE style 4-person tag team match of choral directors in a clinic or in a session.
Yeah.
Who are 3 other choral directors that you'd like in your corner?
Ooh. And are these people that I know, or famous choral directors, people I
Oh, they
know?
can be they can be people you know or people that you would aspire to have in your corner.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm actually gonna name off some people that I actually know. And one of them is my friend and also colleague. She's the assistant director of choirs here. Her name is Lisa Hatfield. She is an amazing treble specialist, and can model a treble voice. So I'm always calling on her to model for our singers, because she can do so more effectively than I. I would also probably bring in my friend Larry Dunn, who's the state president of ARACDA, and that is because he knows how to get the job done. He knows things, he's organized, and he can handle all the things that I can't. And then I would also like to have in my corner someone just in general, all 3 of those people are relatively young. But in general, it would be anybody who has seasoned experience and can provide a perspective that I don't have in that regard. I think of Terry Hicks, Bentonville High School. He is incredibly talented. I revere him so much. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I know a couple of those folks. I think you'd be in good shape.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so burnout is a common topic among choral directors and ensemble directors altogether, educators in general. So, what would you do, and what do you do to relax or fight burnout?
One of the things that I like to do, I love to travel, and my husband always jokes, it's like, you go on a break to do a lot. Like when I travel, it's not to the beach, it's to like New York or DC, like we're just going, going, going. But um, I think that people a lot of times view burnout as you're exhausted, but burnout to me is doing an excessive amount of work for other people. I mean, we are servant leaders as choral directors, as teachers, and it's important to do what we want to do sometimes. And so for me, I know this, like I'm a very like intriguing person in that you can't really put me in one category. So like I love to play Nintendo Switch. Like I'm a grown man, but I love to play the Nintendo Switch, and I grew up with Nintendo 64. But I also love to travel, and even though like I may be going to New York and seeing a bunch of shows, it's for me. It's what I love to do. It's what sparks my creativity and gives me joy and fuels me. So I think that burnout and fighting it is just doing things purely for you, and things that interest you. It doesn't necessarily mean take a nap. Taking a nap isn't like I'm one of those people that I move a lot. Taking a nap is great on occasion, but I can just keep going. I just have to have those occasional moments for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We are a diverse body of choral directors in the Southwestern region. And that question is meant to bring that out a little bit to say, outside of the choral rehearsal room, who are we and what do we do? What interests us outside of the room, outside of music? Who are we?
Yeah.
And so I just made a post about that too, just reminding educators, get a life. Make sure you're living. Make sure you're living life. Make sure you have friends, hobbies, things outside, and don't be so singularly focused on on your students or your singers, because sometimes that can lead, as you said, we are servant leaders, but that can lead to quick burnout if we're not
Yes.
putting some focus on ourselves. So yeah, absolutely, great answer. So got travel, got Nintendo Switch, love it. Okay, so who is another choral musician that you'd like to lift up right now?
Um, I'm gonna have to say that I already mentioned my colleague. I was gonna say her, but I've already mentioned her. She would be in my corner. I'm gonna say Robert T. Gibson, my friend Robert Gibson. He writes incredible music, and as just a little shout out for him, he wrote this beautiful arrangement of Bill Withers' Lovely Day that we actually sang here at Bryant for a faculty choir, and it was just a major highlight of the beginning of the year. And he does great work, and I'm happy to know him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know Robert too, and we just did a piece with my adult choir, semi-pro choir here in Tulsa. So I really enjoy his music too. Okay, I have a Celerando game here that I'd like to play with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to do some quick fire questions to you, and you don't have to think too hard about these. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. These don't have anything to do with choir at all.
Okay.
So what's the worst job you've ever had outside of choral music?
Ooh, working at Sonic Drive-In. Terrible. It was awful.
What was so bad about that?
So I actually started out as a cook, which is so funny because if you know me, like I don't have any place doing anything like that. I don't even cook at home. And I did not want to be a cook. I wanted to be a car hop. That's very much so my personality. And so I would intentionally burn foods. I would be moved to car hop. And I finally got moved, and then I was like, this is kind of terrible too. I didn't like it. People are mean to food service workers. Tip your server and your Sonic car hop for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I worked in food service for a while too, so I understand. I understand that completely. What is your guilty pleasure bad food to eat?
Oh my gosh. I mean, name any of them. I would say that probably there are so many I eat terribly. I would probably say this is uh that's tough. Ooh, easy. Movie theater popcorn with tons of butter. Like it's awful, but like I absolutely love it. It makes me sick because it's too much, but I love it and I can't stop myself. It's so good.
That's my jam too, honestly. If I had to be completely honest, yeah, I go to the movies sometimes by myself just for the popcorn.
I mean, yeah, it's the best.
Absolutely. If you had to do any other job besides being a musician of some kind, what would that be?
Ooh, um, I definitely, I enjoy leadership. I'm very involved with my school and district leadership. And so I would probably, if I weren't a musician and I were staying in the field of education, I would really like to do like be a fine arts director, or I know that's kind of goes in with being a musician. But if it weren't musically related, I would love to be a lawyer. I'm a major nerd about like bylaws and stuff, and kind of arguing a point in a healthy way. And like I love that. So it's strange, but I would love that.
Good to know. We're marking that down as a skill from Tanner. Okay, just in case we need it. What is a movie or TV show that you think everyone should watch at least once?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, Schitt's Creek, just for the wholesome nature of it. I mean, it's just so wholesome. And in terms of movie, I would have to say the Lord of the Rings trilogy or any of the movies. I know they're long, but the film scoring's iconic. The cinematic feat of those movies of their time were just unparalleled. So I love them. I love those movies, yeah.
Good answer. Okay, you have a choice here between either what's the scariest moment in your life or what is your biggest phobia?
Ooh, I'm gonna say phobia. My biggest phobia is definitely snakes. Definitely snakes. And spiders come in a close second. But the reason snakes take the cake is because it is terrifying to me how fast they can move. Like the fact that I could blink and it could be like nearly up my leg if it were across the room is terrifying to me. So definitely don't play with snakes.
Yeah, they can be nasty. I used to hunt rattlesnakes when I was a teenager, so I get that. Yeah. What is something that you spend way too much money on?
Oh, traveling for sure. Traveling and eating out 100%. As a social person, traveling and eating out is just what you do. As an extrovert, going out to eat with friends is great, and I spend way too much money doing both of those things.
Now, we're not talking singing or directing here, but maybe another secret talent that most people would be surprised to learn about you.
A secret talent. No singing, no directing. Um, I would have to say another secret talent of mine. Oh, well, it kind of goes hand in hand, but I do like theater and stuff. If you wanted something random, I am really good at formulas and spreadsheets. I'm just,
Okay. So
yeah.
bylaws and formulas and spreadsheets. We got you. All right.
Oh no.
Mark it down. Okay. President Jonathan Owen is listening now. Um, what is the oldest thing in your fridge?
Oh gosh. Oldest thing in my fridge. I don't cook enough to have really too many like leftovers. But it would probably be some random condiment or ingredient that I needed for a recipe that I tried to cook one time long ago. I'm not sure what that may be, but probably like mustard or something random like that. That's probably it.
Gotcha. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, superpower. Uh, I would have to say being able to teleport. At once upon a time, I thought reading minds would be great, but now I've decided I don't want to read people's minds. But being able to teleport anywhere in the world immediately, that would be great. That'd be the best.
Call, not wanting to read people's minds. That's a good call. And teleportation helps with the travel, so that's good. Stealing one from the Tim Ferriss podcast, if you could have any message on a billboard for thousands of people to see, what would it say?
Being clear is being kind. Brene Brown, huge fan. I think that being unclear or sending like passive aggressive generalized statements or just things like that in general, people try really hard to be nice and not be direct. And really, communication is just so much better when you're just clear and honest and open about it. And when you're clear with people about expectations and what your expectations are, that's being kind to them. It's not being mean.
Yeah, that's true. So many disagreements happen just because we misunderstand each other's true meaning. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, congratulations. You've achieved Tempo Presto. So thank you for playing that little game with me. Hopefully it let people know a little bit more about you outside of the rehearsal room. So what are some goals that you have for the school year or the season? What are you looking forward to most?
So our biggest, like I said, we have a new assistant director of choirs here. And so our biggest goal right now is finding out ways to just improve our current processes. I've been juggling a lot by myself for a while. So I would say the thing that's at the forefront of my mind every day is just how can I delegate? How can I communicate better? And what can I learn from her, being a different type of expert in the room? So that's my biggest goal right now. That's all I can really think about.
Yeah, that's understandable. Okay, so we're coming down to the end here of our talk, but I wanted to give you a little moment to talk about your vision for your guest hosting spot here on the Connections podcast. I think you wanted to call it Treble Talk. So tell us about what your ideas are there.
So I love our conference theme for Albuquerque. I love the New Horizons theme. There's so many ways you can spin that, so many ways that you can it can relate to various topics that we constantly cover. And so I definitely I love an alliteration. I love something that's catchy. So I love that we're going to be co-hosting. And so like in doing treble talk, it's mostly to bring up common treble issues that people face in treble groups. And there are also some trouble issues that I feel like don't get talked about enough. Like I mentioned, having unchanged male singers in like a middle level treble ensemble, and how to approach doing literature that may be kind of storytelling from the narrative of a girl, or, and how you address gender in those ways. And so just common issues pertaining to that, but then also to kind of play on the New Horizons theme for our conference. I would love to really give voice to some younger directors who are doing the work, who are showing a lot of promise. The kind of the for us to be like the longevity of our organization, I think is really going to be contingent on getting our younger members involved and shedding a light on them and the work they're doing. That also goes for new composers who are hitting the scene, who are doing great work, and introducing new choral arrangements and new choral works for treble voices. So I'm kind of playing on the New Horizons theme, but making it treble focused is kind of what I'm wanting to do.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, and I'm excited about that initiative. Yeah, we'll talk more after we sign off here. I'm excited to see kind of where you go with that, and your recordings, and how we can incorporate that into the podcast here, so that everybody can get to know you and your ideas, and also those young conductors that you may want to have on the podcast, or feature conversations that you might want to have. So that's really great. Well, folks, we are fresh out of time. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work, Tanner?
You can follow me on, or add me as a friend on Facebook. I'm young, but not that young. I'm not fully invested in Instagram like I am Facebook. So add me as a friend on Facebook, but you can also add me on Instagram, Tanner_teaches, if you want to get to know about me. And then, yeah, that's probably the best way to get in contact with me.
Great. Anything I've neglected to ask you or talk about that you'd like to highlight?
I think that's good. That covers it.
Okay, great. Well, folks, thanks for joining us today for the Connections podcast with Tanner Oglesby. And I will see you next time. Thanks, Tanner.
Thank you.